Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Repurposing Infrastructure. It is my privilege to share this world stage with Jason Long, partner at OMA. And my name is Kirby. I am a former and hopefully future client of Jason's. So Jason actually began his career at OMA as a student inside of the academic studio environment of Harvard's Graduate School of Design, where he was a student in a course taught by Rem Koolhaas, who's the founder of OMA. So since 2003, Jason has worked on a number of both speculative and built projects, both in the Rotterdam office and here in New York. So in this sense, Jason is an OMA thoroughbred. He is someone that I think is uniquely able to speak to how OMA's heritage and philosophy is evolving and adapting to the challenges of the future. And as for the future, I don't know how many of you all follow Ezra Klein with the New York Times. He's probably sitting upstairs right now. But as he notes, we're on the precipice of a massive and unprecedented era of construction in the United States. And the task before us is not only to renovate legacy infrastructure, but it's also to develop to act decisively, quickly and at scale to develop a new infrastructure that will allow the United States to become or be on the path to becoming a carbon-free economy, which has been kind of a running theme through a lot of the talks that are part of the World City Festival. So if you guys were expecting originality from me, that's not going to happen. No, I'm just kidding. But the scale of the construction task before us is absolutely mind-boggling. Like, the United States has to quadruple the amount of clean energy quadruple the amount of clean energy, which will require a landmass the size of Utah. In addition, American airports, post offices, railways, ports, sanitation infrastructure, et cetera, is all slated for a major revamp under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. So the consequence of this kind of burst of construction activity is that we collectively as a society need to make quick decisions about how we can adapt our civic infrastructure to the future. And it could be said that in the coming decades, the national bird of the United States is not going to be not the bald eagle, but is instead the crane. So it is in this context that I'm very excited to hear Jason's remarks today about adaptive reuse in infrastructure.
Thanks, Kirby. As Kirby mentioned, we have a great relationship as client and architect, and on a project that I'll show you a bit of towards the end of a little presentation I'll give, and then hopefully we can talk a bit about that project and the whole issue. Our office, OMA, is known for doing kind of innovative architectural projects from the ground up. But we're also, and I'm particularly invested in the issue of reuse or preservation, not necessarily from a historic preservationist standpoint, but from the standpoint of taking and transforming buildings that exist within our urban landscape, maybe at a scale or at a vintage that seems unlikely to continue to be useful, and then transforming them into different things. So transforming a parking garage into a synagogue, or an old train station into a museum, for example. And so this slide shows a few of the projects that I'm working on right now or just recently completed. And I'm going to talk about the three at the bottom. Post Houston, which transformed a post office warehouse and distribution complex into a mixed-use facility. The Lantern, a project in Detroit that's transforming a bakery into an arts mixed-use building, and the 11th Street Bridge Park. As I mentioned, we're of course invested in doing projects from the ground up, so rethinking the organism of architecture for new uses. And that's of course some of the most exciting things an architect can do, really reimagining what a building can be. But increasingly, we're looking at existing buildings and treating design less as refashioning the entire vision of what an organism can be, and rather as something surgical. So looking at how we can take an existing situation and through a series of different instruments than maybe we're used to using, transform it in different ways. So a surgical operation that could involve stitching or implanting or puncturing or even inflating like a stent. In Washington, D.C., we're working on a project at the conjunction of the east and west sides of the city along the Anacostia River, taking former piers of a bridge that ran across this river and using them to create a new park. So when a new bridge was built adjacent to the old one, they kept the bridge piers and had the vision of using it as a way to make a different kind of public infrastructure that could connect two very distinct and historically divided parts of the city. And what we are doing, and we just finished construction documents, is taking these existing piers and placing on top of it two platforms that meet in the middle, creating a literal meeting place for these two sides of the river that intertwine into each other and create a kind of layered, programmed park out over the river. This park, the bridge park itself, is shaped into an X by the conjunction of these two platforms. It's an X that forms the bridge's structure, provides shade, provides a vantage point to see out into the city around you, and also creates a layered set of programs that can activate the bridge and make it into something more than just a way to walk across the river. So here you see from the west side of the river, looking across, where it frames a view toward the east and gives you a platform to look back into the monuments of Washington, D.C. In the middle of their conjunction, you have a plaza, and then other areas that are created by this X shape include a cafe and porch, shaded spaces that are also protected from the elements, but still allow you to again get up and get a vantage point out over the east side where there's an environmental education center and an amphitheater. We tried to make the bridge, again, multi-layered in every way, so activated with different programs at different levels that could engage with both the river and the city around it. This is the environmental education center that spills out into a plaza below, but it's topped with solar panels and also collects rainwater into a large cistern that irrigates the park as a whole. We think that one of the most important aspects that this bridge will be in its simplicity is a kind of civic clarity. Not unlike the reservations in L'Enfant's plan for DC, it creates a meeting point that has civic importance and will be an icon, we hope, within the cluster of monuments of DC, and maybe even find its place into something permanent. So a much smaller project that we're working on together with developers in Detroit, the developers behind Library Street Collective, a gallery that's reinvigorated a part of downtown. It's called The Lantern. This is a building that's a reuse of a historic bakery that's in a very dilapidated state in East Village in Detroit, and we're transforming into a home for two arts nonprofits, PASC, the Progressive Art Studio Collective, that is an outreach program for disabled artists, and Signal Return, a local community print shop. This is the building as it exists today, so it has a historical character, an old industrial building, but one that has obviously fallen into disrepair like many other parts of Detroit. And we're transforming into a place that can really bring people together by taking the part of the project that's actually the most dilapidated, lacking both a roof and an exterior wall, and transforming it into a central courtyard that can bring everyone together and also mediate the various levels in the building. This is a project with a very low budget, and we're trying to act on it in a way that's also simultaneously impactful, but also low impact on the pocketbook. One of the most distinctive parts of the building is a large blank facade that exists on one side and in the most prominent corner of the building. We wanted to act on this and open it up and, of course, bring light into the project, but to do it in a way that didn't try to recreate what was there and the other existing openings around the building. And so we thought of puncturing it with a number of windows. This is 150 windows to try to bring light in and keep the monolithic character of what was there at the beginning. But unfortunately, making 150 windows is actually very expensive. So we had to rethink what we were doing, and rather than reducing the number of windows, we actually thought that perhaps increasing them might be more effective. So maybe 1,500 holes could be cheaper than 150 windows. Because we could use simple techniques that you can find on doityourself.com, simply drilling holes through the CMU wall like this. Looks very heroic, but it's actually very simple. to create a pattern, a field of openings that would activate the building, bring light into it, but also act as a kind of lantern at night to signal the transformation of the building. So you see that here. And then last, I want to talk about the project that Kirby and I worked on together, post-Houston. This is the Barbara Jordan Post Office warehouse and office building on the edge of downtown Houston, just across the Buffalo Bayou. It's a building that's almost 1,000 feet long and on 2 levels has a kind of seemingly limitless field of columns within which postal workers sorted the mail on a daily basis for the whole region.
10,000 postal workers, actually, 3 different shifts.
And so here you see this 1,000-foot-long facade. This is the north side of the building where loading took place. And it's a project, I have to say, the number of people bid to buy this when the post office abandoned it, but only Kirby and his family thought of actually keeping the building. It looks like a nice tabula rasa site, but they thought beyond tabula rasa into something more, seeing that the building in its heaviness actually maybe offered something more unique and the potential of what could come there. Obviously, such a big building with no light and just no differentiation whatsoever across its length presents some challenges in terms of bringing people in and welcoming people and using it in different ways. And so what we decided to do was to cut into the building, almost farming it, creating a series of holes that would form atriums effectively, both bringing light in and also creating a series of distinct areas that could be defined for different kinds of uses. Into each of these holes, we wanted to place an object, so a kind of implant that would define its character, but also create a circulation system that could bring you up to the rooftop where there would be a rooftop park, because the view from the roof, which I'll show you shortly, actually reveals a side of Houston that I think few people kind of get to see, which is of a metropolitan downtown that could be the center of the city. So each of these stairs that we're putting in as a kind of implant is also meant to be a social condenser. So a zigzagging stair that's mirrored to bring people together, a stair within a food hall that's wound together as a double helix, and a stair that unfolds almost like a piece of origami to create a series of platforms where people can come together and work in an atrium that's devoted to a co-working space. So one stair, again, is formed from intersecting paths where people can intersect and come together in unexpected ways, but also that form at their conjunction point almost mini stages for performances. And a structure, which is in this case steel, that can be an armature for events and other happenings. Each stair has a different materiality, so one stair is concrete, which you just saw, another is wood. This is the unfolding origami piece that forms the heart of the co-working atrium, where each of the landings of the stair becomes an enlarged stage itself, but in this case for collaboration and meeting, or again, sometimes even performances. Even its underside becomes a kind of unfurled series of petals that create shade and a place for more private work. And then in the middle of all of this is a food hall activated by this double helix stair in the middle of what we like to think of as almost a night market injected into this former post office space through a series of kiosks that are elevated but also create a compressed sense of space when you're actually dining in different configurations. And then maybe the largest stair we injected into this space is in the middle of a 5,000-person performance venue called the
713 Music Hall.
713 Music Hall. I was about to say the old name, but anyway. And then this stair forms the seating that's hanging over the main space, clad in fiber-reinforced polymer and as a kind of glowing beacon at the rear of the stage. Of course, this is just a stepped auditorium, not unlike the one you're sitting in now. But in our case, which provides a space not just to sit and enjoy the show, but also a filter that can mediate between activities and bars in the rear and then the actual performance in the front, and remain porous enough so that you can step away from the performance but also simultaneously engage with it. We utilized the historic tax credits in order to make this whole thing possible, without which it wouldn't have happened. But of course, they did place limitations on what we could do. And in our case, we needed to preserve the existing character of the building, and when the existing character of your building is a blank facade, that can sometimes pose a challenge. So this is notes we got back on some of our initial efforts to rethink the facade of the building that were rejected. In the end, we applied a series of punctures, so not rethinking the whole facade or trying to create a new composition, but rather cutting a series of holes in the rooftop, but also on the north facade, enlarging a series of existing vents to create an almost Morse code along the 11,000-foot long length of the building. The roof has been activated around these atriums that we inserted with a kind of urban park that welcomes everyone in Houston up onto it for uses of all different kinds, with a view back out to the downtown skyline, and also a view down through the ETFE roofs that cap each atrium to the uses below. So that's what we did.
Yeah. So, Jason, one of the things I think is the most difficult for people to understand about the potential of their adaptive reuse sites is, what to make of something that is so, like, let's say, ugly in the case of the post office building, or dilapidated in the case of the bakery. So OMA has a very unique communication and representational style that, instead of conveying beauty in a way, it conveys muscular moves in a way. Mm-hmm. So could you speak to a little bit more about how do you convince your clients of the vision and the possibilities of their site with kind of these really strange ways of representing what you're planning to do with it?
Well, I think that, in all our projects, even the non-adaptive reuse projects, we try to find the set of 2 or 3 key moves that are really the heart of what has to happen to make the project work. They don't necessarily have to be big, but they have to be clear and, as you said, bold, although maybe that's too self-congratulatory. But, and I think that clarity, though, helps us always to define the project in a way that can resist the inevitable ups and downs of value engineering and budget crises, or all the other things that can start to water down a project over time. So in our project, for example, the 3 stairs, even if they had been clad out of paper mache, mm-hmm. still would have, I think, really given a distinct character to each of the spaces and would have survived even whatever kind of crisis hit us. I mean, of course, we built the whole thing during COVID, so we didn't survive a crisis. But I think that clarity helps define it, and also keeps the integrity of the existing building when we're working with an existing building. Because for us, the last thing we want to do is to overclad or to erase the presence of the building that was there before, even if that presence isn't necessarily about historical detail, but just the weightiness, in our case, of the existing building.
All right. I guess that's all we have time today, but thank you guys very much.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Okay, and that is the morning. Once again, I want to thank all of the presenters who shared their time and expertise with us this morning. It is time to pause for lunch break. I hope your brains are all full, and your hearts are full, and your stomachs are about to be full. And as you know, the virtual program is live over the lunch break with online talks if you would like to continue filling your brain while you're filling your face. Redesigning the Boulevard is number 1, about the revival of the Champs-Élysées. Any French speakers, I'm sorry. Again, I said it yesterday, can't do French. And its impact on the landscape of Paris. Tales of Two Cities with Mary Rowe of the Canadian Urban Institute and Gabriel Metcalfe, CEO of Committee of Sydney, and more. So you're welcome to watch on the app now or later, either here or in the theater on screen. And that's lunch. We purposely chose you not to keep you inside the Time Center, as beautiful as it is, although I'm sorry that it's raining outside, because there is an entire city raining outside, and you should be free to choose your own adventure. We've helped some World City community members craft group lunch excursions, so if you're at a loss of where to go or you're looking to assemble a small group, which I really hope you do, we've had some great conversations over the last 24 hours, so I hope you continue them, you'll see there are conversations happening in the app, as well as a short list of great nearby options curated by the World City team. I will see you back here at 2 p.m. sharp with Google and Lend Lease. Thank you.